and I won't back down. Hey, baby, there ain't no easy way out. Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us right here on The Right View for a little ladies' tea. Tonight we're joined by political commentator Stephanie Hamill, as well as the Daily Caller's Mary Rooke. Ladies, welcome to the show. Stephanie, congratulations. You're a mom again for the second time. We love babies. We're very pro-baby here, so congrats to you.
Thank you. I'm a girl mom now, so boy and girl mom.
Oh, well, I did it in that order too, by the way, and I feel like the boys are like absolutely insane out of the gate, and then the girls are a little softer as you kind of like, so they make it a little easier for you. But then I hear around age like 12 that switches. So I'll give you a heads up. I'm about 5 years ahead of you on this whole journey. So I'll let you know how it's going. Well, listen, we had a very big
You're so
week.
spot on. Baby girl is super, super sweet.
Oh, it's the best. We had a big week last week for President Trump. We had a Middle East trip. We had a trip to Saudi Arabia. We had a trip to Qatar. We had a trip to the UAE. And there were so many moments that I think were so significant for the future of this country, right? You saw these moments where you got $600 billion from Saudi Arabia, $1.2 trillion from Qatar, $1.4 trillion from the UAE. These are investments in the United States of America. Not only that, Mary, but President Trump went over and he ensured that he's getting friendly with the people over there in the Middle East, with these different countries. And why is that important? It's important because we want great allies there. We want people who are going to be on our team and not on Iran's team, right? We want people to look at the United States in a very positive way and have a great relationship with us. That would all be great. And I think that you can see it in the polling. People loved this trip. The approval rating overall for the president jumped 5 points after his trip, up to 50%, Mary, which I think is absolutely fantastic. Give me your assessment of the trip overseas to the Middle East.
I think friendly is the perfect way to put it. I mean, the thing that really struck me was every place he went tried to outdo the one before in pageantry and like and reception. Money. Yeah, and money and like just showing him like how much they appreciate the work he's trying to do to like stabilize the region, because the reality is that, you know, Trump kind of campaigned on this idea that he was going to put America first. And there was not going to be any more like introduction into never-ending wars. He wasn't going to try and spread democracy overseas. He was going to look at America and he's going to say, what's the best thing for us? The best thing for us is for there not to be war raging over in the Middle East all the time, right, and for us not to have to send our troops over there to keep the peace. And so I think that these kinds of things play really well, especially with the heartland of America, who, you know, the majority of parents are sending their kids off to fight these wars. It's not people on the coast. So whenever you look at that and you kind of see the little kids waving the American flag and you see them so excited to see the president, and not just that, but like the people in charge, the rulers of these countries that are coming out and they're embracing him, physically embracing him, giving him hugs and shaking their hand and kind of like doing away with the more formality that you would see even if you just traveled to Canada or the UK. This is like an actual embrace of like friendship and thank you so much for everything that you're doing to stabilize our region, and also coming back with all of these you know, the investments into our infrastructure, investments into our technology systems here. What a great day and like week it was to be an American, to watch our president go over there, not stumble down the stairs, not stumble through his speech, get through it, get hugged and do all these things. So I think that this I think it kind of calmed a lot of fears and helped Americans see that this kind of stable strength through, you know, peace through strength type of movement's really going to work. I also really loved the fact that he hit at the neocons in one of his speeches where he was like, we're no longer going to like look back at that 90s era Republican Party policy and enact that over here. And I'm like, thank God, like finally someone is coming out and saying it, and it's not just JD Vance as the president of the United States, you know. So this is, I thought it was really great.
It was so great. Yeah, and he said, Stephanie, he really gave credit for the way these areas have built themselves up, and they've kind of westernized in some ways. You know, Saudi Arabia, like 7 years ago or 8 years ago, I don't even think women could drive. I believe you had to, as a woman, at some point in the relatively recent past, If you wanted to go to a doctor's appointment or something, you had to have either permission from your husband or your father. They're changing the ways over there a bit, and women are able to drive. It's not as strict, their society over there. But President Trump said, look, we don't want to come in and nation build. You did all of this yourself, and you have this ability yourselves to enrich your countries and to better your countries and to do all of these great things. I thought that was such a smart play, and just to say, like, hey, you guys pat yourselves on the back for how far you've come, and I think there's a lot more you can do. I also love that he really urged Saudi Arabia to join the Abraham Accords.
Yeah.
I thought that was fantastic. I think that would be such a win if we saw that happen as well. He lifted the sanctions on Syria and was the first president in 25 years to meet with the leader of Syria, marking sort of a shift and maybe a transition period and a softening of things and a reset of sorts, which I think could be huge for the entire world if we're able to see really positive things come out of this region.
Yeah, I mean, what we witnessed was the art of the deal, the president edition. This was truly a historic week for the U.S. and all of the nations involved. And I think back of all of the leftists who are constantly fretting of how President Trump's going to appear on the world stage, and they worry about him being a disaster and all of these things. Yet when he actually goes to other nations and meets with the heads of these nations, it always goes incredibly well. Just think of the optics of what happened, and specifically Saudi Arabia, where they had the fighter jets escort Air Force One,
cool.
how they rolled out the purple carpet, which is, one of the highest honors. The crown prince was waiting for him. And it's just such a stark contrast on how they treated former President Biden, which is the crown prince didn't even meet him at the airport. And so, again, these leftists who are constantly criticizing Trump don't want to give credit where credit is due. And as Mary mentioned, the over $1 trillion in secured investments to the U.S. and imagine all of the jobs that's going to bring to this country. And, again, nobody wants to give credit where credit's due.
Well, it was such a cool thing to watch. You're right. The fighter jets. My favorite too is whenever he was walking down one of these kind of like welcome receptions, and there were the hair twirlers, and he was like,
yeah,
"I
the
love
hair
it."
clipping. I know, that was the greatest part.
So good. But that's who he is. And then he's sitting in one of these giant, I don't know if he was in a mosque or what he was in. He was in one of these giant, like ornate, maybe it's a palace of some variety. And he's commenting on that's good marble work. That's why people love him. Like you're never getting that from any other president. He's so real. He's so himself. But he's so strong, and it is the peace through strength that he's consistently talked about that we actually saw taking root and taking hold in this very trip that he took overseas. The other thing that I thought was funny was to see the hysteria over the $400 million plane that Qatar apparently is going to gift the United States of America. And there was an ABC News reporter who asked President Trump about this and would he owe them favors and this, that, and the other, which if anyone's ever met President Trump, you know what? He's a businessman. He may be president of the United States for a second term, but he's a businessman at heart, and he wants a great deal. And he's saying to himself, listen, if we can get a plane for free for the United States, that's money I'm saving the taxpayers. That's money we don't have to put out, right? This is a good thing. And he made this, he gave this analogy of Sam Snead, I think it was, a golfer. And he said to this ABC News reporter who asked, he goes, you ever heard of Sam Snead? He used to say, if they're going to give you a putt, take the putt. And they're going to give us a plane, so I'm going to take the plane. I just, Mary, I think the funny thing is to see where everybody tries to get crazy. They know they can't really criticize this trip, so they went like triple hard on the Qatari plane, apparently.
Yeah, and you know what I thought was really insane with this whole deal is it's like no one batted an eye when President Biden's son, Hunter Biden, received all that money from Burisma. Yeah. That was just shoveled under the rug and, kind of ignored by mainstream media. But because the taxpayers get a break on paying for a plane, all of a sudden that's the worst thing that's ever happened to democracy. And I remember seeing a lot of people tweet about it, including Hillary Clinton, saying, you don't get a plane unless, there's like a favor being asked behind it. And I'm thinking, you of all people would know, wouldn't you, Hillary Clinton? Like, let's talk about Haiti. Let's talk about the Clinton Foundation. Let's talk about all of these different things did you get favors for these things? What about when your husband was governor? And, it's just this hypocrisy. They want to put their sins onto him and say, we know we've done it. So, of course, he's going to have to be doing it too. And the reality is that Trump's just kind of laughing and saying, this is just me getting a free plane for the American taxpayer.
Lara, but we're missing the big story here, and that is the fact that Boeing hasn't been able to produce
what I was gonna say. Yes.
New Air Force One for the president. I mean, think back that billions of dollars were invested in this plane, back in Trump's first presidency, and they still haven't been able to build one plane. That is the story here.
No, it's embarrassing, Stephanie. This is. The sad thing is, if we can't revive Boeing and get Boeing back up to snuff, I mean, my gosh, I don't want to bring it back up again, but they're part of the reason those astronauts got stuck up in space that Elon had to go rescue, right? It's really kind of sad to see that we are still waiting. You're right, on the Air Force One plane. It was supposed to be done last year, I believe, or maybe in December of this year. And now it's kind of open-ended. I think President Trump sent Elon at some point during the transition period to check on it and see what's going on. And he came back and he was like, no bueno. Like, things are not going well for that. So, and by the way, this plane, the Qatari plane that everybody's hysterical about, it'll be the next president's plane too. It's not like Donald Trump is taking this plane with him when he leaves office. So it's all kind of crazy to me. We need a new Air Force One. I think it's 40 years old, the one that he's currently flying around on. So somebody who did not have a great week or weekend probably was James Comey. This is maybe not the smartest thing I've ever seen. He took a photo, as everybody's probably heard, of what he says was a cool shell formation on my beach walk that's wrote out the numbers 8647. Anybody who has ever worked in the food industry knows 86 means it's done, it's dead, like it's over. Everyone knows what this meant. And even President Trump himself came out and said, you know what? This was pretty clearly an assassination attempt. 86 means to get rid of, to kill, to end. They sent the United States Secret Service to James Comey's house. And to me, it was very reminiscent of the Kathy Griffin. Remember when she held the head up? There was just it's just so stupid is the point. Like, you should have known better than to post something like this online. You were the former FBI director. Like, what is wrong with this person, Mary, that James Comey thought this was smart? And then he took it down and he was like, whoa, I'm not in favor of violence. Just stupid all around. Like, you had to know what you were doing when you posted this.
Right. So the point is that he said that he didn't understand it. So this has several implications. One, he was the head of the FBI, and you're telling me that you don't understand that 86 means to take something out?
Yeah.
Also, we've seen Democrats and people on the left consistently call for the murder of Donald Trump and his family. This is insane. This is a man who has survived several assassination attempts, and yet we have someone who used to head the FBI say that we need to take him out and essentially put instructions out to say, okay, now's the time. And then the other side of this is the left went so far after that man, and I can't remember what his name is, but he created the meme during the 2016 election. And it was essentially like, if you're a Democrat, make sure that you vote the day, and he put the date after the election day. And he was like, this is the new day that you need to vote. And he got years in jail for that. And, he was dragged through the mud. And so you're telling me that all of a sudden we should just give James Comey a slap on the wrist because he put 8647? Absolutely not. We should throw the book at him. We should make sure to make an example of him, because this call to violence from the left is so devastating to the actual fabric of democracy that they claim to uphold. We can't have people coming out calling for assassination attempts of the President of the United States because they don't like his policies.
Yeah, I mean, it's normalizing it, Stephanie, really. Like, that's where we've gone. It's this is a casual just call for assassination of a president, not a big deal. I mean, is he just so sour, Stephanie, that President Trump has been so successful in his second term already that he just he couldn't help himself? Is that what's going on here?
This one social media post perfectly encapsulates exactly why he was not worthy to be the leader of the FBI, and which is why President Donald Trump had to fire him. And I remember people were really upset that he got fired. But this is, again, look how childish and evil it is to post something like that. So Comey's defense is that, oh, I didn't know what 86 meant. I just thought maybe it was something political, but I didn't know what it was. So that's why I posted this seashell picture. He knew exactly what it was. And his defense of this isn't even any better, because he's either suggesting he's dumb or he's like an evil person. It's like, no matter what, it's just not a good option or a good look for him. But it turns out, I don't know if you know this, he has a book coming out. So he posted this maybe to generate a little publicity for his book. But I'm young enough to remember when people post threats like this against political people, that they would get deplatformed. But, things don't seem to work like that on the left. They'll still platform Comey, have no problem with it. Yeah, I do remember them very well. But they'll still give him a platform because they don't disagree with him. And, this just it is more like salt on the wound, if you will, because remember, there were 2 assassination attempts on your father-in-law. Yeah. So, this isn't like cutesy time to be posting these type of things. And because, there are wackos who follow Comey and think that is a direction from the former FBI director to maybe act on something like that. And so I think he very well knew what it was. He's just, trying to generate publicity for his book, sadly. And I do appreciate that he got a visit from the Secret Service. I'm not convinced something will come of it, but we'll see.
We will see for sure. The next thing I was going to talk about was that we got the audio from the Robert Hur interview, the audio that the White House obviously kept covered up during the 2024 election, and just kind of how sad it was to hear really how far gone in February of 2024 Joe Biden was. And then we've got the information, late on Sunday that Joe Biden has prostate cancer. They said last week President Joe Biden was seen for a new finding of a prostate nodule after experiencing increasing urinary symptoms. On Friday, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer characterized by a Gleason score of 9, grade group 5, with metastasis to the bone. That does not sound good. While this represents a more aggressive form of the disease, the cancer appears to be hormone sensitive, which allows for effective management. The president and his family are reviewing treatment options with his physicians. Look, I don't care what your politics are. I don't care about a lot of things. When you have a deadly disease like cancer, I'm going to pray for you, and I'm going to pray that Joe Biden gets better and beats this. And Mary, I think that I encourage everybody to feel that way. This should never be something anyone celebrates. And I truly wish him well, and I wish his family well. There's far too many people in this country who've had to deal with a cancer diagnosis, and it's absolute hell. It's terrible. And so I'm really wishing Joe Biden the best. And Mary, I think that I'm very hopeful that I see a lot of people do that.
Yeah, you know what? When I first heard about this, my dad has had cancer twice, so it's one of those things that's like really near and dear to my heart. It obviously makes me sad, but then the other feeling I had was it makes me so mad. We're talking about the former president of the United States, and he only just stepped down a couple months ago. Right. So where's the medical staff? Like, is this a fast-acting cancer? How long have they known that he's had it? How did they let it get to this stage? Because prostate cancer is very treatable, especially in the early stages. And so, it's just kind of shocking to me. Obviously, it's really sad for his family. I know that obviously I disagree with a lot of the things that they've done and the policies that his administration put out. However, I do appreciate how close-knit the family is. And so it's got to be kind of a devastating thing to hear of the patriarch of their family going down kind of like this. So praying for him, hoping that he's doing better. And I hope that the right can show some civility in this moment and show the left like how you're supposed to act when someone gets devastating news like this, and not champion his death like, they would if it was the other way around.
Yeah, it's a great point, Stephanie. That's exactly what I hope we do. Maybe this can be a nice reset for a lot of people. Maybe people who have been calling to 8647 could take a look at this, at people being civil, people being human beings to one another, and say, you know what? Maybe we should take a breath, and maybe we shouldn't wish ill on anybody.
Yeah, as you point out, I would never wish a cancer diagnosis on anyone. That's terrible, and I feel really bad for Biden and his family. But this isn't going to stop all of these leftists who have turned their backs on Biden right now, like Jake Tapper, who has his book coming out on May 20th. All of these people who pretended pretended that Biden was perfectly healthy to run for re-election, that there was no issue with his mental and physical decline. All of a sudden, these people are like surprised that there was, and pretending that they were duped by White House officials when we'd been talking about it, Lara, for years. We were concerned for years, and we were called conspiracy theorists. Laura, I recall Jake Tapper in a viral clip from one of his segments telling you, you're not a doctor. How dare you observe something with your own eyes? How dare you insult people with speech issues? And so, it's just so disingenuous and corrupt, if you will. I mean, there was a huge cover up on Biden's health, whether there was huge meetings on it or not, probably not. But all of these people were just so desperate to have him and the left running the White House that they overlooked it all and tried to deceive their viewers.
We live in a time where speaking the truth often comes with a cost, but silence has a cost too, and it's one we can't afford. Live Not by Lies is a powerful new docuseries that shines a light on how soft totalitarianism is gaining ground in America. Based on the best-selling book by Rod Drehar, the series shares real stories from men and women who lived under brutal communist regimes. They know what it's like to lose freedom, and they see it happening in the warning signs here. Through gripping personal accounts and powerful interviews, the series shows how surveillance, censorship, and ideological conformity are not things of the past. They're happening now, often disguised as progress or protection. You can stream Live Not by Lies today by joining Angel Guild. Visit angel.com/Lara to join. That's angel.com/LARA. Watch it, share it, and stand firm for faith, for family, and for freedom. America's national debt has soared past $36 trillion, but smart investors are turning to gold. During President Trump's first presidency, gold surged over 52%. This year, gold has already broken records, soaring past $2,900 an ounce, and analysts predict it could even hit $3,300 soon. Now's the time to find out more about investing in gold. Call 855-704-GOLD or visit goldgatecapital.com. You can buy gold with cash or easily add gold and silver to your IRA or 401k. And for a limited time, you could get up to $15,000 in free silver with qualified purchases. Goldgate Capital has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and thousands of 5-star reviews. Don't wait. Claim your free gold information guide today. Call 855-704-GOLD or visit goldgatecapital.com now. Yeah, and by the way, imagine, Mary, that Joe Biden had stayed in the race in 2024. Imagine somehow he squeaked out a win in that election. I mean, these people were willing to say for so long that he was okay to be president. I mean, obviously, we all were, like Stephanie just said, we were all like, that's crazy because there's clearly something wrong with him. But imagine that, and then imagine he gets this horrific cancer diagnosis right now at the start of his second term in office. That's kind of a scary prospect. And I agree with your point from earlier, which is like, aren't you supposed to have very regular checkups as the president? Aren't you supposed to be able to kind of avoid this sort of thing? I don't know. I think so. But you also have, and one of the things, by the way, in Jake Tapper's book is that a lot of these aides that Biden had worried that if he won the election in 2024, he was going to be in a wheelchair to serve his second term in office. So I don't know. It's all very upsetting on a lot of different levels. I do feel, and I feel very strongly that no matter what happens, and again, we're going to hope for the best with Joe Biden, there are people who helped push him along when they knew that he should have been done. That these people who lied to the American public, there ought to be some serious repercussions, Mary, for them, because we were in such dangerous territory. It is really terrifying to think of what could have happened. We're lucky it didn't.
Absolutely. You know, I wrote a piece last year. I think it was like in June. It was before he stepped out, so it had to be in like June of last year. And I labeled Jill Biden Lady McBiden. And they talked about this on The View, but at the time, the New York Times clipped that little headline and, you know, called out the Daily Caller for being a right-wing website and, you know, peddling in conspiracy theories and all of that stuff. And everything that I wrote about, all of those opinion pieces where I was like, there's something wrong with Biden. You can clearly see it with your eyes. And Jill is helping cover this up. We were told that, you know, we were lying and that we were just trying to push clicks and all of these things. And
cheap
so
fakes. Remember the cheap fakes? Remember that nonsense?
Yes. And that, I think that was the most, like, the hardest thing for moderate Americans to swallow was that they could see it too. They're not captured by left-wing media, so they don't have to sit there and like gobble the slop that they give them every night. And so whenever you're just a moderate American, you're not really necessarily gung-ho on MAGA, you're not necessarily left-wing, you're right there in the middle and you're watching the president deteriorate in front of your eyes, but then everybody around you is telling you, no, this is normal. Conservatives are just peddling conspiracy theories. I think that that's that moment where you're like, no, something's up here. We have to stop this train. And like you said, what a difference it makes to know that we aren't having to deal with that, because God forbid something did happen to Joe Biden, then we're stuck with Kamala Harris without her ever getting a vote from anyone. We're talking about not a vote in the primary, not a vote, you know, he picked her as his vice president. So, you know, that's an even scarier perspective, if I'm being honest, than having Joe Biden in a wheelchair. I don't know that the policies would change very much, but having her talk to other, you know, political leaders and other countries and trying to deal these same things that Trump is doing right now, I don't know where our country it would be. I'm taking a big sigh of relief today.
Yeah. By the way, Stephanie, I was thinking of that during this Middle East trip that we started the show talking about. I was trying to imagine Kamala Harris garnering that level of excitement, that level of media attention, the numbers of investments coming back here to the United States from these Middle Eastern countries, the just general goodwill that we saw come out of that trip overall. I was trying really hard. I was like, what would this have been like? Could you imagine, Stephanie, had we sent Kamala Harris over to the Middle East? Do we even think she would have gone to the Middle East? We certainly wouldn't have seen, you know, just before his trip, the last living American hostage held by Hamas coming home. That's for sure. Thank you, President Trump and Steve Witkoff, for that. But Stephanie, imagine Kamala had gone on this Middle East trip. What would we have been in for there? What would that have been like?
I don't think I'd be able to endure the cackling that would go on the trips. But as you pointed out, Laura, I don't even think they would happen. I don't see that Harris would be a uniting force with these countries to secure these investments. I mean, Donald Trump's all about diplomacy, no matter what the other people say. So I think you're so right. And I just, it's horrifying to think that, you know, there was a close call and we could have had a President Harris, but luckily, you know, we have President Donald Trump, and I'm thankful for that every day.
Every day. Just to wrap us up here, Mary, you actually had a very interesting piece that I thought we should talk about. You wrote this whole piece about what divorce does to families and why it's so detrimental. I think that we're a kind of divorce-happy society. Oh, yeah. You know, people... I'm going to go out on a limb here and just say I feel like people don't want to dig down deep whenever things start to hurt and do the work and put in the time. And I get that there are some things that are unforgivable and you have to move on and those sorts of things. But tell me a little bit about what you found out in writing this piece. I'll read a little excerpt. You say, following divorce, parents move apart, household incomes fall, parents work longer hours, families move more frequently, and households relocate to poorer neighborhoods with less economic opportunity. This bundle of changes in family circumstances suggests multiple channels through which divorce may affect children's development and outcomes.
Yeah, so the thing I think that struck me the most is that everything that was listed in here, as far as the statistics go, it's like understandable. It's like you should just already know that these things were going to happen. Higher rates of teen pregnancy, actually higher mortality rates. It said something to the fact that children are dying before the age of 25 at like a 50 or 60% higher chance of that. We're talking about lower income levels for when they get adults. So it's like lower income by 9% when they are 21. And then by the time they get to 27, it's lowered by 13%. And then a lot of this is attributed to the fact that the children are having to mourn a living parent. So one parent leaves the home and then they have one parent there, but God designed us to be together in order to be able to function, on both sides of the emotional and physical side of our children. And so whenever you're stripping that away from children and you're requiring one person to do it all, and the stress of that, I mean, I'm a child of divorce. I'm one of 6 sisters. And so, whenever we look at our lives, and I sent this to them and I'm like, can you believe we beat every single one of these statistics? Like, we must be the anomaly out of all of this. But, I was talking to my mom about it, and she was saying that regardless of everything, both my mom and my dad worked very hard to stay in our lives at all times. I remember my dad driving hours to take us to volleyball and basketball tournaments. And I remember, my mom being at every single play. And then when my mom remarried, my stepdad would come up there and be a part of it. And we really were like, as dysfunctional as we were, it was as cohesive as you can get as far as divorce goes. Now, I'm not trying to paint a perfect picture because it definitely wasn't, and it was extremely hard on us and all those things. But I do think that we lucked out with the parents that we had because, as my mom put it, they both loved us 100% of the time. And so with that love, we kind of got to overcome these things. And I also say by the grace of God, because it is through him that we made it out. But I know a lot of people in my class who got divorced at a very similar time as like my parents did. And I tell you what, when I look back on Instagram and I see where their lives are at, I think to myself, you did not make it out of this statistic. Like, It's sad to me to see the effects of it. And it's so obvious. One of the things I wish the study had looked over was the effects of like, say, sexual assault, or, how many kids got captured into like transgender ideology with these things, because I do see a lot of the people that I grew up with that had this were affected by both of those things. I think that whenever you lose the protection in the home, of both parents having their eyes on their children and making sure they're being kept safe, then predators can obviously come in and have an easier access to it. So I'd love for someone to do a 50-year study for this. That was the crazy thing. It was over 50 years and over 5 million kids and families that they studied through this thing. Yeah. So it really is comprehensive. And like you said in the beginning, I think we've come to a point in our culture where we've told people, okay, so you're unhappy right now, then the grass is greener on the other side. And it's something my husband and I said from the very beginning. We got married very young. I was 22 and he was 24. And we were like, divorce is not an option. His parents had never been divorced. I had gone through it. And both of us were like, this is not going to happen. So even in our hard years where we like to say we're not on the same page or even speaking the same language, it's one of those things that's at the bedrock of it. We will never leave each other over my dead body kind of thing. And so I think whenever you go into it, that mentality, I may hate what you're doing right now and can't even speak to you, but I can guarantee you this, in 10 years from now, we're going to be like on a beach somewhere sipping Mai Tais and having a great time. So we just need to get through this hard period. And I think if more parents explain that to their children and more churches explain that to their engaged couples, it would be a lot easier on our society, because it's society ending. Because whenever you have a family that's together, say they have 1 or 2 kids and then they get divorced, how long does it take for them to find another spouse and get remarried and then start having kids again? But if they were together, maybe they have 3 kids, maybe they have 4 kids. You know what I mean? And so there's this butterfly effect that happens with that decision. And so my counsel to everybody who gets married is divorce is not an option. Obviously, abuse and neglect are one of those things that you have to take into account, and that's excusing those situations. But in every other instance, just because you're mad at him or he's not paying you enough attention does not mean that you leave him. You find a way to bring him back into you. So that that was kind of my soapbox moment of the week.
It was a very fascinating article to read, by the way. I love that you wrote it. Everybody can go to the Daily Caller to find it. It's great. Stephanie, I come from parents who never got divorced. And it's funny because I feel like I'm a bit of an anomaly to a lot of people I know. whenever people find out that my parents have been together for my whole life, they still live in the same house, by the way, that I grew up in and I came home from the hospital to. It's kind of sad to me that we have come to this point. I feel like we're a very immediate society. Like, we need stuff at our fingertips all the time. We need that immediate hit of whatever it is. And if you are not completely satisfied in your relationship, instead of kind of taking some internal review of what's going on, I think that the knee-jerk reaction these days is to say, like, you know what, I'm just out because I can find something that's easier and better than this. It's never supposed to be easy. The things that you have to work hardest for in life are the things you cherish the most. Yep. You are going to have highs and lows. It is going to ebb and flow. There will be days that you want to be together the whole day and you can't, get enough of one another. There will be days you can't stand the sight of your spouse. That's life. That's marriage. That's how it's supposed to be, Stephanie. Do you agree? Like, do you feel like we're this society that everything is just given to us so easily that people are like, I can't put in any work for this?
Yeah, I did read Mary's piece. I thought it was really well written, and I think it's such an important topic that is completely overlooked. If you think about it, a nation is much stronger with stronger families, not having divided homes. And as Mary pointed out in her article, all the consequences that come along with that. And Lara, you're so right. I feel like people are not realizing the traumatic effects that this might have on kids and families, and they seem to think that the grass might be greener. It's just easier to give up. And it's just, it's not right. There's a few things, right? Like Mary mentioned in her article, which is if there's physical abuse, violence, those type of things, that's a good justification for a divorce. But other people think that the grass is greener, or they're, irritated with their spouse. It would just be easier to be alone. And when you have kids involved, it isn't easier, and it really affects the people around you. My advice for people before they even get married is really take a deep look at the red flags. Wonder if you are fully compatible. All of these things really matter before you even take the step to get married, and then really evaluate your relationship there before you have kids. And of course, there are people who change in relationships and all of those things that you can't really avoid, but people do throw in the towel too easily. And I love that your parents have been together for so many years, Lara. My parents, I think, have been married for 45 years. I can't imagine what type of person I could have become if they had been divorced with my type of personality. But luckily, I had both of my parents there to guide me, and the fatherly figure and the motherly figure that helped give me a good balance in my life and good perspective. So I'm really thankful for that. I am married. I have 2 kids. I'm never going to get divorced. I hope I'll never get divorced. And if my husband tries to divorce me, I'll just keep him in a cage in the backyard and he'll never leave me.
Yeah.
So Mary, great piece.
What's interesting is they say that there will be times where it's like one of you is the one that's kind of keeping it together and holding on, and there will be times the other one is the person. And I think as long as one of the two, and look, you hope that both times everybody wants, all the time everybody wants to stay together, and that's the goal. But as long as when you're going through those really tough times, there's one person who's really saying, no, I'm going to hang on to this, I'm going to fight for this, then there will be success. And it's so funny you say 45 years, Stephanie. My parents on May 9th celebrated their 45th wedding anniversary.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's just great. Like, it's such a great thing to look to. Yeah. Nothing's perfect. They had their ups and downs as well. Like every life, has. That's how it goes. It's how a marriage is. It's how life is. But it's great. It's my parents are great role models for
Isn't
me
it funny
and for my
now,
brother.
like as you're married and you have kids, like seeing the difference, you kind of like humanize your parents in that way, where it's like, okay, now I really see the struggles that you went through to stay married for 45 years, because although marriage has been the greatest thing that's ever happened to me, and I really love being married to my husband, there are some years that are not as easy as others. It ebbs and flows, like we say. And so when you look back at this, and you're like my husband, his parents will be married 50 years next year. Wow. And so whenever you look at that, and I really look up to them, because same, it ebbs and flows for them too, and looking at it and understanding what they had to go through to sacrifice and stay together for their family it's a beautiful thing. I wish my parents had done the same. Obviously they didn't, but it also gave me a perspective on the other side to look at it and go, okay, I never want that life for my children. Right. So you'll be buried in the backyard before you're walking to that courthouse to sign the paperwork.
Not that we want to threaten anybody, Mary,
Yeah,
but if
exactly.
we have to, we will.
Oh, I didn't know that was a threat. I'm so sorry. And much like 86ing, I didn't understand what that meant.
Didn't have the full read on that. Well, listen, ladies, thanks for joining. We love having both of you, Mary and Stephanie. Thank you, as always, to everybody at home. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, and follow. And we'll see you back here next time for more of The Right View. And I won't back down. Hey, baby, there ain't no easy way out. Nothing is worse than being on a phone call that drops. Nothing is worse than trying to text someone and you can't reach them because your phone is out of service range. And nothing is worse than supporting these major corporations and companies who don't support us. That is why I love Patriot Mobile. They are America's only Christian conservative wireless network. They use every cell tower out there available to all networks so that they have the greatest 4G and 5G coverage nationwide, and they support the causes that are important to us as conservatives. If you go today to patriotmobile.com/Lara Trump and use the promo code Trump, you will get free activation today. Again, that is patriotmobile.com/Lara Trump. The promo code is Trump for free activation so that you can get a great cell plan and feel good about doing it.